the Californian Silicon Valley Bank got into trouble midway through last week. And the problem was that depositors got increasingly worried about the safety of their money in the bank. That caused a classic bank run, one of the most dramatic ever in history, in fact. We have a UK part of the Silicon Valley Bank here in the UK. It's actually separate. It's a subsidiary here in the UK. Its management tried to sort of reassure customers here that things were fine, but people were worried that what was going on over in the US might have contagion here in the UK. So that's led to a situation where the Bank of England has said that it may need to step in and resolve the UK part. But this weekend, there could potentially be an option for another big bank here in the UK to take over the British part of Silicon Valley Bank.
Just give us an idea of how big this bank is, because most people wouldn't even have heard of it.
That's right. Lots and lots of people won't have heard of it, but actually it plays a really big part in the tech sector, both in the US and in the UK, and indeed in other countries too. It's got 40 years of history, real expertise, providing banking services for tech businesses, life sciences businesses, and certainly here in Britain, that's the case. And a group of those firms have written to the government to say it's really important that this bank doesn't go down and that our own investments, deposits in the bank don't go down too. So the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has said they're looking at it very closely and we'll see what happens. I think the trouble is that for lots of people in the wider world, they might think, well, hang on a second, are we actually going to see taxpayer money being put at risk here to save sort of tech businesses, life sciences businesses, when perhaps their own shareholders, their own owners may be called upon to step forward?
Mr. Hunt has said that he was working with both the Prime Minister and the Governor of Bank of England to avoid or minimise damage resulting from the chaos engulfing this bank. I mean, do you think they'll be able to do that? There's this 24-hour deadline, but can they actually minimise the damage?
There are lots of options available to them. I imagine they might quite like it if a big bank, high street bank, would step forward and take over Silicon Valley Bank and then sort of immediately overnight take on its responsibilities and liabilities. If that doesn't happen, then the government has a few options. I think most likely what they'll try to do is provide some sort of short-term funding so that when tech firms which use Silicon Valley Bank open on Monday, there's some sort of money there for them to keep paying their staff, basically. So it's a sort of short-term lending liquidity scheme that the government might well look at to try and keep all these firms operational and not, what they want to avoid are potentially tens of thousands of sort of job losses and failures across UK tech.
So when do you think we'll know? In the next 24 hours, I guess?
Yeah, I think they'll be desperately keen to have something, if they possibly can do, ready to go before the stock market opens tomorrow morning. I think Jeremy Hunt has talked about in the next few days, but they'll be very, very aware of the potential benefit of getting it ready before the markets open.
Going back to the original bank in the US, didn't its president a couple of years ago press Congress to reduce scrutiny of the bank, and they agreed?
I've really no idea if its president did request that. I think the trouble is that Silicon Valley Bank in the US is a better known bank and certainly very respected and has lots of expertise in its area. But actually, what it's done is mismanage its assets and liabilities. It invested in lots and lots of longer-term bonds, and then it was caught out by interest rate rises, which meant the value of those bonds fell. It's by no means alone in having done that, but the problem was that people started to lose confidence in it and started to yank out their deposits. Silicon Valley Bank had to sell off those bonds, and it's kind of created this vicious circle that we've now seen. I think one of the things that really worried people at the end of last week was whether there would be contagion of this problem into other banks, and certainly a lot of other bank share prices were hit. I think there'll be lots of people out there who will be very keen to point out that actually Silicon Valley Bank's problems were quite specific in terms of the concentration of its challenges and problems, not least the fact that it's in a sector where it's a very sort of narrow sector that it operates in, that in itself caused some problems. The fact that there were changes in the dynamic of the VC market. So I think people will be very keen to try and be cautious. And if indeed there are other wider problems, then they will need to be addressed. But I think just sort of a general sense of panic is unwarranted.